The Granby Street Cafe in Norfolk, Virginia, was a place where time seemed to move in slow, predictable rhythms. The linoleum floors, worn smooth by countless footsteps over the years, bore the faint scars of spills and scuffs that no amount of mopping could fully erase. The air was thick with the perpetual scent of bacon grease, mingling with the sharp aroma of freshly brewed coffee that percolated from the ancient machine behind the counter. Forks clattered against thick ceramic plates, creating a symphony of everyday sounds that blended into the background like white noise. It wasn't a glamorous spot, no polished chrome counters or artisanal menu boards here. Just a simple diner serving up hearty breakfasts to locals who needed fuel for their days. Alyssa Trennheim had been a part of this world for 6 long years. At 32, she wasn't the wide-eyed newcomer anymore. She was the backbone of the place, the waitress who knew every regular by name and preference. Mr. Harlan liked his eggs over easy with a side of rye toast, extra crispy. Mrs. Patel preferred her tea steeped for exactly 3 minutes, no more, no less. Alyssa moved through the cafe with an effortless grace, her quick smile disarming even the grumpiest patrons, and her even quicker refills ensuring no cup ever went empty for long. It wasn't her dream job, far from it. She had once harbored vague ambitions of going back to school, maybe studying nursing or something that felt more meaningful. But life had a way of derailing plans. Bills piled up. Her mother's health had taken a turn a few years back, and suddenly the cafe's steady paycheck became her lifeline. It kept her head above water, provided a rhythm she could rely on in a world that often felt chaotic. This particular morning started like any other. The breakfast rush had peaked around 7:30 a.m., with construction workers piling in for their greasy platters and office folks grabbing to-go coffees before heading to their desks. By 9 a.m., the crowd had thinned out, leaving just a handful of stragglers scattered across the booths and tables. In one corner, a young couple sat hunched over their phones, their argument hushed but intense. Something about forgotten anniversaries or misplaced trust. Alyssa guessed from the snippets she overheard while passing by. Across from them, an older woman with silver hair methodically tore open sugar packets, stirring them into her coffee with deliberate slowness, as if savoring the ritual. Near the window, a group of construction workers in fluorescent vests laughed boisterously at a joke that involved a mishap on their latest site, their voices booming but harmless. Alyssa wiped down the counter with a damp rag, her mind wandering to the mundane tasks ahead. Restocking the napkin dispensers, checking the creamer levels, maybe sneaking a quick break to text her sister about weekend plans. The cafe's glass door, with its perpetually squeaky hinge that no one ever bothered to oil, swung open occasionally, letting in blasts of cool Virginia air. It was mid-fall, and the weather had turned crisp, carrying hints of impending winter. Alyssa glanced up each time the door moved, ready to greet whoever entered with her trademark warmth. And then he walked in. He was tall, broad, shouldered, but his gait was uneven, deliberate. He leaned heavily on a cane in his right hand, the polished wood tapping rhythmically against the floor with each step. In his left hand, he balanced a tray precariously, a plate of scrambled eggs wobbling slightly atop it, alongside a steaming mug of coffee that threatened to spill. A scar, jagged and faded but unmistakable, peeked out from the collar of his weathered jacket, snaking up toward his neck. His jeans were neatly pressed, but the left pant leg was folded and pinned just above the knee, where his limb ended abruptly. This was Sergeant Calvin Roark, a Marine veteran whose body bore the invisible and visible tolls of battles fought in distant lands, places like Iraq, where headlines briefly captured the horror before the world moved on. Calvin wasn't in uniform today. He didn't need it to command respect. His strong shoulders and determined gaze spoke of a life shaped by discipline and sacrifice. He moved with a quiet intensity, his silence heavy, earned through experiences that civilians could only imagine. Alyssa spotted him immediately from behind the counter. Something about his struggle, the way the tray tilted dangerously, the subtle grimace he hid as he adjusted his weight, tugged at her instincts. Without a second thought, she stepped out from her post. "Sir, let me help you with that," she said, her voice warm and steady, honed from years of diffusing tense moments with patrons. Calvin looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "I've got it," he muttered, his voice gravelly, but the tray betrayed him, tilting further as if to underscore his words. "Please, let me," Alyssa insisted gently, sliding the tray from his grasp before disaster struck. She steadied the coffee mug, grabbed a handful of silverware from the nearby station, and walked beside him, matching his pace to an empty booth by the window. Customers nearby glanced up, some with faint smiles at the small act of kindness, others barely registering it amid their own conversations. As they reached the booth, Calvin eased himself down with a relieved sigh, adjusting his pinned pant leg carefully. "Thank you," he said, meeting her eyes. "Not a problem," Alyssa replied with a genuine smile. "You want me to grab you some extra napkins? Maybe a fresh cup of coffee?" He nodded once. "That'd be great." To Alyssa, it was nothing. A fleeting moment of service, the kind her mother had drilled into her since childhood. "If you see someone in need, you help," her mom used to say back when Alyssa was a kid, helping with groceries or holding doors for neighbors. It wasn't glamorous, but it was right. She poured a fresh coffee, black as he preferred without asking, and even slid an extra plate of toast from the warmer onto his tray. Veterans, she'd learned over the years, often appreciated that little extra to stretch a meal. Calvin's eyes softened at the gesture. "You didn't have to do that." She waved it off. "It's no trouble. Enjoy your breakfast." But across the room, behind the counter with arms crossed tightly over his chest, Martin Kedge saw it differently. Martin had managed the cafe for 3 years, treating it like his personal fiefdom rather than a community hub. He was a short, stocky man in his late 40s, with a perpetual scowl that deepened the lines on his forehead. He snapped at staff for untucked shirts, slow orders, or any perceived inefficiency. To him, the cafe was about turnover, getting paying customers in and out as quickly as possible. Kindness, that was a luxury he couldn't afford. From his vantage point, Alyssa's help was wasted time. She was ignoring tables with open checkbooks to assist a man who, in Martin's narrow view, wasn't contributing to the bottom line. Calvin had brought his own food in, a clear violation of some unspoken rule in Martin's mind. His jaw clenched, fingers tapping impatiently against the counter. Alyssa didn't notice. She was too busy chatting lightly with Calvin about the shifting weather, how the cold was creeping in earlier than usual. The cafe hummed on, oblivious to the brewing tension. The young couple's argument simmered down to awkward silence. The older woman sipped her sweetened coffee, lost in thought. The construction workers wrapped up their meal, tossing bills onto the table. But Martin? He was a powder keg, and Alyssa's small act of decency was the spark. As she returned to the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, Martin leaned in, his voice a low hiss. "What do you think you're doing?" Alyssa blinked, caught off guard. "Helping a customer." "He's not a paying customer," Martin snapped, his face reddening. "He brought food from outside. You've got tables waiting, and you're playing babysitter." Her jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. "He needed help. It took 30 seconds. 30 seconds is money lost," he retorted, his voice rising just enough to draw a few glances. Behind them, Calvin shifted in his booth, his hand gripping the cane tighter, knuckles paling. Alyssa met Martin's glare. "I'll handle my tables, but I won't ignore someone who needs a hand." Martin's eyes narrowed, his breath coming in sharp bursts. "You think you know better than me? You're one mistake away from walking out that door." The warning hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. Alyssa stood frozen, her heart pounding. She glanced back at Calvin, who watched quietly, measuring her resolve. The cafe, once a place of routine comfort, now felt like a pressure cooker. Customers pretended not to notice, but the tension was palpable, the air thicker, conversations quieter. Martin wasn't done. His pride, bruised by what he saw as insubordination, pushed him further. He strode out from behind the counter, his shoes squeaking loudly against the floor, drawing more heads. "What in the world do you think you're doing?" he barked, loud enough for the construction workers to pause mid-laugh. Alyssa steadied her voice. "I was just helping him. He's not buying anything from us." Martin cut her off, pointing at Calvin. "You don't waste time on charity cases." The room fell quiet, conversations dissolved, even the griddle's hiss seemed muted. All eyes turned to the unfolding drama. Alyssa swallowed hard but stood her ground. "He needed help. I carried his tray, that's all." "That's not your job," Martin snapped. "Your job is serving paying customers, not running a community center." Calvin's cane tapped the floor. "I didn't ask her to help," she offered. Martin sneered, "and you should have declined." A murmur rippled through the cafe. The older woman gasped softly. One construction worker muttered, "That's cold." Alyssa's hands trembled, but she clenched them. "If 30 seconds of kindness costs that much, maybe you're in the wrong business." Martin's face darkened. "That's it, Alyssa, you're done. Grab your things, you're fired." The word fired echoed heavy and final. Alyssa froze, the coffee mug slipping in her grip. Fired over this. Her chest tightened as reality sank in. The room was silent save for her shaky breath. Calvin stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "Are you serious?" Martin jabbed a finger. "She works for me, or used to. This doesn't concern you." Calvin's eyes narrowed. "It concerns me if someone's punished for doing the right thing." Phones emerged from pockets, thumbs sliding across screens. Martin ignored it, too focused on Alyssa. "You're not the hero here. You're an employee who couldn't follow priorities." Alyssa steadied her voice. "I won't apologize for helping. If that means losing my job, fine." Calvin's voice cut like steel. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Martin laughed harshly. "Please, she'll be begging for work by week's end." The cafe charged with tension, whispers spreading. Alyssa set the mug down, her voice cracking. "I'll get my things." Calvin's hand tightened on his phone. Without a word, he typed a short message and sent it. One simple text that would change everything. The silence after the outburst was deafening. Alyssa untied her apron, folding it carefully, her mind racing. How would she pay rent? What about her bills? Customers shifted uncomfortably, some averting eyes, others staring. More phones raised, recording the aftermath. Calvin broke the tension. "You think firing her makes you look strong?" Martin sneered. "I care about my business." Your business just told everyone it values profit over humanity. Murmurs agreed. He's right, whispered a man in a baseball cap. The older woman dabbed her eyes. Martin dismissed it. Employees are replaceable. The word stung Alyssa like a slap. Replaceable. After 6 years, Calvin's voice rose. You don't talk about people like they're disposable. Martin squared up. Stay out of this. The air grew tighter. Alyssa grabbed her purse, hands shaking, chin high. Come on, Calvin said quietly. You don't need this place. I don't know where to go, she whispered. You'll figure it out. People like you always do. Martin rolled his eyes. Oh, please, Calvin typed again, hitting send. Someone's coming. Martin snorted. What, your mommy? Good luck. But his words lacked punch. Customers glared, loyalties shifting. A young guy muttered, this is going viral. Martin barked, put your phone away or get out. The guy grinned. I'm already live. Martin froze, live, broadcasted in real time. Alyssa clutched her purse, stomach twisting. All she did was help, and now her life was collapsing publicly. Calvin sipped his coffee, eyes on Martin. You'll regret this, Martin scoffed, voice cracking, but the message was sent, motion set. The cafe was about to transform. Alyssa hesitated in the hallway, buzzing with emotions. She turned back. Calvin sat measured, waiting. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? Calvin raised eyebrows. Dragging you into this? Don't apologize. You did what's decent. If the world had more like you, it wouldn't have changed so much since I came home. But now I have no job. Rents do. Jobs come and go. Character stays. You showed yours. She wanted to believe him, but the knot remained. Then she saw his phone, a text to Ramos. Who's that? Old friend. Active duty at Camp Allen. He's coming. Alyssa's eyes widened. You didn't. I did. Marines look out for their own, and those who stand with them. Hope stirred amid nervousness. You think he'll come? Marines don't leave texts unanswered, especially about respect. Martin barked orders, pretending normalcy, but his jaw twitched. Whispers circulated. Did he fire her for helping? This is on Facebook already. Calvin nodded reassuringly. You're not alone. She collapsed into the booth. Feels like I lost everything in 5 minutes. You stood up. Sometimes it costs at first, but payoff comes later. You believe that? I've seen it. She followed his gaze outside. At first nothing. Then 2 men in marine dress blues stepped from a sedan, posture unmistakable. They're here, Calvin murmured. Alyssa's pulse quickened. Oh my God. They strode toward the entrance, shoes shining. The door squeaked, atmosphere shifting to expectant silence. Martin stiffened, confusion flashing. He hadn't expected this. Alyssa whispered, "What's about to happen?" Calvin smiled thinly. "Respect is about to stand beside you." Martin thought he was in control. That mistake would cost him. The door shut with a soft thud, but the entrance of the 2 Marines echoed through the Granby Street Cafe like a thunderclap. Their dress blues were impeccable, ribbons gleaming under the fluorescent lights, shoulders squared in a way that spoke of unyielding discipline. The taller one, Captain Elias Ramos, had a face etched with the lines of command, close, cropped black hair, sharp eyes that scanned the room as if assessing a battlefield. Beside him, Corporal Trent Maddox was younger, his jaw locked tight, his posture just as rigid. They didn't need to announce themselves. Their presence alone sent a ripple through the cafe, conversations halting mid-sentence, forks pausing in midair. Customers exchanged glances, sensing the shift. The young couple forgot their argument. The older woman set down her coffee, and the construction workers leaned forward, intrigued. Martin Kedge, still behind the counter, straightened abruptly, his forced smirk betraying a flicker of unease. He had barked orders and fired employees before, but never under the gaze of men like these, men who had faced real fire and carried themselves with an authority that made his managerial bluster seem childish. Calvin lifted his cane slightly from his booth, catching Ramos's eye. The nod they exchanged was brief but loaded, a silent acknowledgement of shared history. Battles fought side by side. Ramos clapped a firm hand on Calvin's shoulder. "Sarge." Calvin gave a half-smile. "Knew you'd come. Always," Ramos replied, his voice steady. Then his gaze shifted to Alyssa, who sat across from Calvin, looking small and shaken amid the chaos. His tone softened, a rare crack in the disciplined facade. "You're the one who helped him." Alyssa blinked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, I just carried his tray." Maddox spoke up, his words cutting through the tension. "And you got fired for that?" The question hung in the air, drawing more eyes. Customers leaned closer, phones still discreetly recording. Martin cut in, laughing awkwardly to mask his growing discomfort. "Let's not exaggerate. She wasn't doing her job. I run a business here. If employees can't stay focused, they're out. That's management, plain and simple." His words spilled out too quickly, his voice cracking at the edges. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression as he glanced around, noticing the sea of judgmental stares. Ramos turned to face him fully, his eyes narrowing like a commander sizing up an insubordinate recruit. "Management is one thing, disrespect is another. You fired her in front of everyone for showing humanity to a veteran." "I don't need a lecture from outsiders," Martin snapped, but his authority waned, his posture slumping slightly under Ramos's unflinching stare. Calvin leaned on his cane, sitting straighter. "This isn't just about me, Martin. It's about the message you sent. That kindness is a liability, that helping someone in need is punishable." The room remained hushed, everyone holding their breath. Martin tried to rally, his voice strained. "Look, I don't have to explain myself. This is my cafe, my rules." She broke them. Ramos stepped closer, his tone measured but firm, like issuing an order on the field. "No," she lived by the rule this country was built on. "You don't leave people behind. You don't turn your back when someone needs a hand." She showed respect, and you punished her for it. A low murmur spread through the cafe, gaining volume. One construction worker clapped softly. "Man's right," he muttered. Maddox crossed his arms, his uniform taut. "And you want to talk business? Look around. Every person here watched you embarrass yourself, not her. Good luck keeping customers after this." Martin's face twisted in defiance. "You think you can walk in and tell me how to run my place? I don't care if you're Marines or..." "Careful," Ramos warned, his voice dropping low, the cafe seeming to shrink under its weight. "We didn't come to fight. We came to stand with someone you wronged." Alyssa sat frozen, overwhelmed. She hadn't sought defenders, yet here they were, flanking her like sentinels, their presence a shield born of principle. Martin puffed his chest, desperate to reclaim control. "You can stand all you want, but she's fired." "That's final." Ramos's eyes swept the room, to the phones, the watchful faces. "Final? No. What's final is the story leaving this room. When people see a waitress fired for helping a Marine, they'll remember your name, your face, your cafe. Your business is already gone." Martin's mouth opened and shut, hands fidgeting. The older woman lifted her phone. "I've got it all, every word." Alyssa stared, the weight sinking in. This was bigger than her now. Calvin's eyes flickered with satisfaction. "Told you you'd regret it." But the story wasn't contained. The cafe's quiet shattered further as the door creaked open again. 3 more Marines entered, led by a woman in uniform, her gaze sharp as a blade. The room vibrated with the power shift. Gasps rippled. Someone whispered, "They just keep coming." Martin's face drained of color. Stumbling back, "What's happening?" Alyssa whispered. Calvin exhaled. "Marines." 5 uniforms now stood with Alyssa and Calvin, their presence commanding silence. Phones raised higher, whispers darting. Martin, once arrogant, looked diminished. "You can't storm in here. This is harassment." Ramos tilted his head. "No one's hijacking. We're here because you humiliated her for doing right." People saw it, and they're still seeing it. Outside, headlights stacked, cars slowing, drivers stepping out with phones. The teenage boy grinned at his screen. "This feed's blowing up 20 zeros. 0 views in 10 minutes. Martin's breath hitched. "Not possible." "It's happening," the boy replied. The door opened to strangers, locals from the stream. A woman in scrubs slipped in. "Is it true? He fired her for helping a Marine." Eyes snapped to Martin. The accusation, once whispered, was loud. He stammered, cut off by a man with a camera crew. "Channel 13 News, we're live." "Explain yourself." Martin froze, exposed. He had ruled unchallenged. Now walls dissolved, the world intruding. Alyssa sat rigid. "This can't be real." "It's real." "Justice," Calvin said. The Marine stood witness, silent but resolute. Outside, a chant started. "Respect." Respect. It grew, rattling windows. Martin's shoulders sagged. He turned to Alyssa, desperate. "End this, tell them you overreacted." Her lips parted in disbelief. "Clean your mess." "Please, what this does to me, my family." Calvin interjected. "Should have thought before deciding paycheck over decency." The chant drowned him. "Respect, respect." Ramos leaned in. "You're finished, Kedge. Question is, walk out with dignity or lose it fighting truth." The camera light clicked on. "Mr. Kedge, why fire a waitress for helping a disabled veteran?" The cafe gasped. Martin stood frozen under the glare. Alyssa's chest tightened. She wasn't invisible. Her act had grown immense. Calvin nodded. "Stand tall. The world's watching." Her voice trembled but steadied. "I don't regret helping. Not for a second. If kindness is fireable, problem isn't me." Applause erupted. Chants doubled. Martin, cornered, lowered his head. Authority, pride, future lost. But Alyssa's story continued, support sweeping in to change her forever. The chants peaked as cameras shifted. Alyssa emptying in the booth, hands trembling. "I'm unemployed, rent due. How do I get home?" The scrubs woman approached. "What you did matters. Hospitals hiring patient aides. You'd be great." Alyssa stunned. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes when ready." A construction worker offered a card. "Brother owns a diner. Hire you tomorrow." 2 offers from strangers. Calvin smiled. "Payoff comes later." Marines watched like guards. A woman with a baby approached. "Facebook group helps. If short on rent, we'll raise it." "Why?" Alyssa asked. "You stood up, deserves repayment." Tears spilled. "This doesn't feel real." "Because you reminded them of decency," Calvin said. Ramos approached. "You're trending nationally." News picked it up. "By tomorrow, half the country knows your name." Terrifying, powerful. You stood for kindness when it cost. Martin groaned, face in hands. Café lost. Alyssa, surrounded by possibilities. New job, community, self. Definition beyond cruelty. What now? She asked Calvin. "You choose. Worst day or first of better?" "Something better," she whispered. He nodded, walked toward it. "You've got people behind you." Outside, chants celebratory. "Respect, respect." Alyssa stood taller, clutching offers, looking at the sea of supporters. For the first time, she felt tall. The true choice, let cruelty define or reshape future. As the chanting outside began to soften, and the reporters wrapped their live coverage, the Granby Street Cafe transformed irrevocably. The walls, once confining everyday routines, now felt porous, as if the energy from the crowd had seeped in permanently. Coffee pots still hissed. Plates clattered faintly in the kitchen, but the atmosphere was electric with change. What began as an ordinary shift had become a pivotal moment, not just for Alyssa, but for all who witnessed it. She sat back in the booth, catching her breath, staring at the business card and echoing hospital offer. The roar outside vibrated the glass. It was overwhelming, like a favorable storm. Calvin shifted, adjusting his cane, his face calm, almost proud. "You're stronger than you think." Alyssa laughed shakily. "Strong? I feel tossed in a hurricane." "Strength is standing when terrified. You didn't let him break you." She looked at her trembling hands, realizing truth. She hadn't begged or hidden, she spoke raw. For years, she felt just a waitress, now more. Martin hunched behind the counter, ignored, customers' looks condemning. His iron fist reduced to obscurity, power evaporated. Ramos stepped forward. "You've decisions ahead, not just job. How you carry forward, people look at you because you did good in a needing world." Alyssa's chest tight with weight. "What if I let down? Maddox, you won't, hardest part done." Outside, chant shifted. "Alyssa, Alyssa." Layers filled air like music. She pressed hand to face, tears free. "Don't deserve this." "Calvin, you do. Kindness matters, standing up matters." Small act chains reactions, changing lives. Gave belief. Marines glanced, agreeing silently. Came for Calvin, stood for Alyssa, lesson forward. She rose slowly, trembling but taller. Turned to crowd outside, whispering, "I'll make it count." Calvin smiled faintly. "All anyone asks." Customers clapped as she moved to exit, swelling to cheers. Some touched shoulder, thanked, said she reminded Decency. Stepped outside, cool air rushing, greeted by faces standing with her. Crowd cheered, reporters angled mics. Alyssa waved small, acknowledging as humans believing better. Behind, Martin shrank, voice lost, fired thinking final word. Truth, he had none. Night carried, story spreading, posts, clips, headlines. By morning, Alyssa's name symbol, kindness punished, defended. Reminder, decency not wasted. In heart, she vowed, never let convince compassion weakness. It changed her life. This isn't just Alyssa's hours. Daily, moments to look away or step. She showed right choice costs, but gives bigger, dignity, respect, knowing right side. The aftermath unfolded swiftly. Support tide reshaping Alyssa's world. Strangers approached with offers, jobs, funds, encouragement. A local business owner pledged interview. Community groups started fundraiser covering rent twice over. News outlets clamored for interviews, her story inspiring nationwide discussions on kindness, veteran respect, workplace decency. Calvin and Marines stayed briefly, ensuring safety before departing with nods of solidarity. "You've got this," Ramos said. Alyssa nodded, strength growing. Walked home amid lingering crowd, phone buzzing with messages. Friends, family, unknowns praising stand. By evening, reflecting alone, she chose. Accept diner job. Pursue nursing dreams with raised funds. Moment didn't break, empowered. Martin's Café closed weeks later, boycotted, his name synonymous with cruelty. He faded. Alyssa rose, advocate for compassion. In one day, from fired waitress to symbol, proving small acts ripple profoundly.
If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with others so they can learn something from it too.